so much for making the time to chat with me again. I really hope that this is going to be a positive experience where we can just chat, get to know you a bit more. Hopefully that sounds good to you.
Yes, my mom. Yeah, that's great. Of course, yeah.
That's the most important person, right?
You're right.
I want to start off with a sort of a strange question, but I was curious because I read on your Q&A form when you answered the question about what your favorite hobby is. You said, my whole life is a hobby. And I was hoping that you could expand on that a bit, because I have a few thoughts, but I was curious to get your take.
I don't, perhaps I was being snarky, but I just, people ask what your hobbies are, and you have to find something that makes no money, but takes up time and costs something. And so like, there's this sort of, it just seems like we're making this system whereby anything that doesn't create wealth somehow is not worthwhile in a system, or it is worthwhile, but only as this kind of extra little thing that we do. Mm-hmm. So, and if I think about like the way I sort of live day to day, I am extremely lucky in that like I enjoy my job pretty much. So it's work, but I don't really have some kind of like line where now I'm going to go do my hobby as opposed to some other part of life. I mean, like, I suppose I could say since the pandemic, basically, I've taken up gardening. I mean, that's something I could say, but it's just, I just want off of that system where we have sort of a life and then a hobby, or we have a work-life balance, and there's no other possibility of like just having a life, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I was thinking about it in terms of presence in life, and when I read your answer, I was like, oh, that's actually interesting, because in a way it sounds like you just want to be more present in all areas of life. It's not like one thing's more important than the other, or one has more meaning than another thing.
Yeah, exactly. If your hobby is, I don't know. Yeah, if your hobby is gardening, I mean, garden. But you're right. Like, but when sometimes it's the connotation of the word. Like, it's like this lesser thing that is not part of my serious work. But in fact, I mean, honestly, the gardening has been quite meaningful to me.
Yeah.
But I've never thought of myself as a gardener. In fact, this is a band actually, but I've got my
Chicago Farmer, perfect.
I got my Chicago Farmer shirt. So now it's my identity, right?
Yeah.
My hobby has become my identity.
That's usually what happens, though.
Yeah.
So for people who don't know, what do you do for work?
I am the chair of an adult ed program in a community college outside of Chicago. So do they have the same thing in Canada? I mean, it's sort of like a smaller state school that you kind of go to. I don't know, they're great schools to go to. They're usually cheaper, and some like a 2-year school. And then we run programs for immigrants learning English and for students who want to get a high school diploma. So what I do during the day is teach ESL. So I teach English for when I say immigrants, that many of my students have been here 20 years. Some have been here 2 months. Just anybody adult who wants to practice English, basically.
That sounds really meaningful. And
I mean, it's lucky. Yeah. I mean, it's like, yeah. It is, and maybe that's part of the whole thing. Like, right, I realize like I'm checking my privilege, right? Because I understand, like, if you have some different job, I'm married to a person who has a different kind of job where it ends at 5 o'clock, and now you do have this kind of real bifurcation, I guess, of what your life and your work is. I mean, it's it's work, but it's something that I hope we're doing something good for people. Yeah, at the same time,
that's sort of the baseline. We're always hoping that we're just going through life with providing something positive to the world.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to say it. It's sort of like the baseline. If your baseline is you're just doing something positive for the world, I mean, like, what more does anybody need to do? Really, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Other than live with presence, I'd say.
Right.
But on that point, I'd actually like, no, growing up, were the adults around you practicing that idea of presence, or was that something that you sort of came into when you got older?
I don't think I mean, we didn't have that idea. That was not an idea that anybody had. But also we didn't have, you know, I'm an old, we didn't have a lot of things. I mean, we had distractions, like, it's just we had different distractions, I suppose. As technology has sort of become a stronger presence, you know, in life, then there's this sort of opposite thing about being present. That wasn't really a concept, you know, like probably until I was older, you know, for me, obviously it's a concept in the world and an old one. It's like, you know, yeah. But for me in the suburbs of Chicago, as growing up, nobody was like, let's be present here. No, I don't know. It wasn't really something. I mean, that idea of being present, like, what does it mean? Is like, you know, you're living your life a little bit more slowly, perhaps, or you're just sort of, or you're not casting your consciousness into your computer. Yeah. Perhaps. I mean, that's the point of gardening, I suppose. You know, it's like, you know, you can dig in the earth, or you could pray. I mean, it's sort of similarly in the sense of like, I'm just doing this thing now, you know? Yeah.
Gardening definitely gives you a sense of time, because you're like putting something into the ground, you're putting a seed into the ground, and you know that you have to wait however long for the thing to grow, and you have to always be there, present, to nurture it and make sure that it doesn't wither away.
It is, and you know, it is a kind of like meditative, I suppose. And I spent a chunk of my life on an island in the Pacific, you know, 11 years or so. So like a chunk, a good chunk of it. And there, again, you know, that's just the sense of time was sort of a little different, and it, you know, it took me maybe 3 years to get used to it, and I never quite could be on time somewhere, because on time was not a concept that I never really, you know, but it was also a good experience, I'd say, in terms of just slowing things down, I suppose, and being more present, just not having stuff, you know, just, we didn't have internet really. I mean, we just, you know, I read long books, that kind of thing. You know.
What are those?
Yeah, I know. I could pay attention for more than 2 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
What I'm curious is like, what's your concept? Like, what does that mean to you to be present? Like, why do you ask the question?
I'm really glad. I'm sorry. I've sort of been shoehorning this idea. Yeah. But I've been thinking about your piece a lot the past few days, and throughout the piece, you're talking about this person who's walking down to a gorge. As the piece progresses, their body's slowly deteriorating or becoming disfigured, and you pay so much attention to what is going on to their body. I found it really interesting that there is that focus on the person's body and what's happening to it. So I made me think about presence, and when I saw your answer about the hobby, I just thought it's interesting that this popped up for me. But absolutely, that's my interpretation. I'm not trying to put you in a certain box. But speaking of your piece, I'd love to chat with you about it and sort of ask the question, what is the piece about? What made you start writing it? What's the story behind it?
Yeah, well, I mean, there is a story behind it. I guess it was something that I started as a creative nonfiction piece, and I don't remember exactly when I wrote it. I would say it was last year. It was, and I think I said I write early in the morning, in which case sometimes I've forgotten by the afternoon exactly what I did at 5 a.m. Right, so it's probably one of those things. But anyway, it started as a creative nonfiction piece about something that happened to me a long time ago, which is I was young, and I went to China, and this would be a very different China than exists today. But anyway, I went to China. I was at Tiger Leaping Gorge, is this place in Yunnan, China, and it's a place you sort of hike into it, and then you can stay at a little like guest house kind of thing. And so I stayed one night there, and I walked down the gorge because just to go to the river. And it was like, there are parts that are like steep, you'd have to like, you know, climb up, but then you could sort of walk down. And so actually a couple of things in that actually happened to me. Little children did throw rocks at me. That, you know, it was an interesting time to be in China. That was my second time there, and you know, there were not a lot of sort of travelers at that point. And anyway, I went down, and I did, when I got to the bottom, like I fell, you know, and I was traveling by myself, which is an important detail. I did fall and like sprained my ankle slightly, probably, right? But it was like,
Yeah.
I had a moment at the bottom, as I recall, I had this moment at the bottom, like, oh crap, what am I doing here? Like, and I actually did have this, and this is not in the piece, but you know, I did have, what I was starting to write about was like this realization I had that, why am I here? I should be seeing my friends. I have very good friends in Beijing, like, you know, but I decided, like, I want to go hiking by myself to this gorge, you know, and do all this stuff, and I'm gonna like take the bus and the ferry and the train, and you know, and from that moment, I was like, okay, every move from here is to go back and just see my friends, because this is stupid. I'm sitting at the bottom of a gorge, you know,
Yeah.
gotta crawl out, you know. Nobody seems to really want me here anyway, right? I don't know. And yeah, I wish I could say that was a lesson that I took, and then I never did anything like that again, but not really. But it is something that was like important to me. So as my story that I think of, like who I am, it's like at that moment I was like, okay, it's more important to see your friends and be with your friends than it is to go off on your own and some whatever, you know,
Yeah.
push yourself. But so anyway, I tried to start to write this thing. This is a long story, sorry.
No, this is great.
And I realized it was just like, it just wasn't working as a nonfiction, and it just, you know, it was a long time ago, and like the details are misty. We're talking 30 years ago, 1994 probably, right? And like I couldn't quite convey it, and so I just sort of stripped it down. So I wrote all this stuff. I just stripped it down to the essence, and I decided, like, just like make it not me, and it doesn't have to be Tiger Leaping Gorge. And like I just had this thought, like, what if I actually stayed there in some fashion? Like, what if I'd actually, or maybe, or just like a feeling that I had, that not what if, but like, actually, yes, I did part of, or maybe my real self, or just me, or something, right? I am dust heap at the bottom of Tiger Leaping Gorge right now, and or whatever, and like the rest of my life has just been this kind of like, I've been a shadow or something, but I've always just been at the bottom of this gorge trying to talk to people, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that felt to me, feels to me, however you might take it, as like, that was the actual genuine emotion I was sort of feeling at the time, or it was like the actual kind of honest feeling that I had, you know, that like, I've been in this gorge for 30 years, calling out, you know, in some kind of like fashion, that some kind of like confusing fashion, where like people are like, what is this voice coming from? So yeah, I mean, that's the story of it, I guess, you know. And then you don't get that from reading it, but if you read it and it resonates, or it seems at all honest, I mean, that's probably why, because it is sort of based on, you know, an actual event, more or less, right?
Yeah, absolutely. When I read it the first time, I remember specifically, I read the line, "My kneecap travels around my leg about 2 inches, straining the ligaments. The knee area begins to swell. I'm afraid of bone fragments in the blood, clotting. I don't think I can pop it back in myself." When I read that, I was like, okay, this isn't the natural thing that's happening. It's when I realized that something's happening here that's beyond the normal,
right?
Which I found really, really interesting. And I'm really curious. You said that it's been 30 years since you were in the gorge physically, and I'm curious, what was there any reason that the memory came back, or you felt like you had to write about it last year, or was just something that you're like, this could be interesting?
That theme of enlightenment, you know, or like theme of like having a moment where, you know, where you look back and you know that like, that's, maybe we never have those, or we have very few of those in life, where like there's a moment you can think about, like, I made something happen in that moment that made my self different, right?
Yeah,
like that, like and it doesn't probably happen very often. And yeah, I mean, I guess I just sort of wanted to write about that feeling, you know, of that sudden change. And it does seem to me that that is a physical thing, really.
No, that's fantastic.
But yeah, it is, like you say, it's sort of it abstracts, and it's not, you know, yeah.
It abstracts, but at the same time,
all that did not happen to me. Just
yeah.
Oh, I think, yeah.
it abstracts, but it's also grounded in, you know, the real, like what's actually happening in life. So I love that you're dealing with these ideas, and the title, the piece is called Enlightenment, and you can sort of take that philosophical approach to it. But you know, somebody's body is getting absolutely destroyed, and it's interesting to follow them through that journey. Yeah. And you're constantly putting in parts that seem a bit more like religious or spiritual, and it just keeps you moving between those two areas. So yeah, it's fantastic how you do that. And a question I had for you was, do you usually write based off of your experiences, or was this a one-off thing? What type of writing do you usually lean towards?
Well, I have my MFA from the Iowa Writers Workshop in poetry. Poetry was the start, and then I didn't write for a long time, and then I've written, musicals, and more nonfiction. So there is a book you can get on Amazon of nonfiction that I wrote. So I did a lot of nonfiction, then recently much more fiction, right? So I kind of have done a lot of different things, but now fiction mostly. Yeah.
That poetic voice definitely comes through with Enlightenment.
Yeah, that one is it's more like what I would write as a poem. Yeah, we didn't have flash fiction when I was at Iowa. We had prose poems, sort of similar type things. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite musical?
Yeah, I want like that. That is a good question. I want to, that comes to mind, and this is just because it's a weird choice. The Kinks Preservation Act, if you want to see.
The Kinks
the Kinks, yeah, the Kinks. I'm going to show you right now. Let's see. This is part one.
Yeah. I've never heard of it.
I mean, it's not a show tune, but it really, my best experiences, maybe I saw Into the Woods, and I thought that was wonderful. I mean, that's the more likely choice, but on my the Kinks have been on my mind. So
I'm trying to think of that band, Pink Floyd. Is it like The Wall?
Yeah, but fun. Yeah, but it's funny. Yeah, it's like, I mean, The Wall is like so morose.
Yeah, it is. It is very.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Then I'll definitely check it out.
I mean, maybe it's for a certain taste, I suppose. Absolutely. Even Kinks fans don't love it, I suppose. But
Yeah, good to know. But I enjoy musicals, so I'll definitely give it a chance. Yeah. Switching gears a bit, what currently inspires you to write?
Yeah, the thing that comes to mind is actually like I have actual kind of writing partners now, or people I can share with, and the world of like workshops these days, like, 'cause I sort of swore to myself I would never take another workshop after I left Iowa, and like there's no reason, like I felt like I'm full on workshops, I'm good, but then I did start again. I was like, it's like so, it was like so like lovely to take classes and stuff for fiction, and meeting people, being on Zoom. I was like, I think what's inspiring is, for me, just that there's people I can talk to these days. The approach now is just, I don't actually have inspiration. I just wake up and do it if I can't. I mean, there's actually no inspiration involved. It's just kind of like, well, I woke up, so I might as well. I have an hour. I mean, that's kind of my routine, right? If I'm really gonna write or create or do if it's not like revising or something, it's probably between like 4 a.m. and 7 a.m. I don't know, so I'm not particularly inspired. I'm just like tired. You have to like, I mean, I get out of my own way that way. I don't know if that's the same thing as inspiration. It's like as the day goes on, I think there's Anthony Bourdain has said something like this, which I think is just true. Like as the day goes on, I get stupider and stupider. So like basically, he was also a morning writer.
Yeah.
By 5 p.m., I'm not going to write a poem. I don't know. It just.
There's inspiration in the morning, huh?
Yeah.
And is there anything you're currently working on?
Well, yeah, I mean, I've been working on a novel for 3 years, and that's fun. So like, I've just decided to like pretty much scrap it and not scrap it, but like to reconstitute it as something different than what it is.
What made you do that?
Well, I finished it and I looked at it and I I had somebody read it actually, which is great, and I realized that a lot of it there's. I am a poet. The plot is not very good, I have to say. But so like I looked at it, what I decided was like there's plot and there's things that happen. And a lot of this is just things that happen, and not plot. A lot of it is good. I mean, I'm not saying it's bad, right? There's parts of it that are good, and I'm just going to take the parts that are actual plot and kind of put them together in a way, instead of like stuff that happens. I don't know. It's a learning. I mean, it's so hard. I just really, anybody who completes a novel is good. We had this sort of like rivalry at Iowa, the fiction writers and the poetry people, like like, oh, I'd never do that. I mean, and they would say, oh, great, I could be a poet. Like, I write 2 lines in the morning, then go drink. That's like, there's this whole thing to writing fiction. I guess there's all this stuff you got to know. Turns out that, so I kept plugging away. Can I tell you, it was 120,000 words. It's too much. It's too much.
You got 120,000 words, and you're like, all right, time to scrap it. time
to read. Well, and like as if it wasn't like, believe me, I bet I was in heavy mourning for a couple months and could not face it.
That's a lot of time.
Yeah. I finished a dissertation. It's harder than my dissertation. I'll tell you that much. Like I started it after my dissertation because it was like, I just wanted to write something without having to cite sources or read about it. Let go, be free. So it was sort of like a big rush of words, but then molding it into something. I don't know. What do you write longer form stuff, or you're?
Yeah, I'm currently working on a novel myself.
Oh yeah.
And it's absolutely as hard as you say it is.
It's so hard.
I think the biggest thing for me right now is just writing the damn thing,
right,
and finding the time to do it. And I've been trying to fix my sleep schedule so that I can wake up at like 5-6 a.m. and before work I can cut out a few thousand words, or usually it's like a few hundred.
Yeah, that's a lot of that's a lot.
On a good day.
Yeah,
it's a lot of energy, a lot of time.
It takes a lot of space. You need time, and then also it's a lot of time where you don't know if it's going to pay off in any way at all. So I guess it just better be fun in some fashion.
Exactly. Yeah, there's a point where you get so far into the word count that you're like, all right, I'm not doing this for any other reason except either I have to finish it or I'm enjoying it.
And then I had this thing where I hit the word count, went past the word count, and now it's like I got spaghetti, or so it's just narrative spaghetti basically that I throw it anyway. But
sometimes
it's better. I guess it's better to have something to work with than nothing.
Yeah. At the very least, you can say you're honing your craft. So
yes, I'm honing my craft. Thank you. That's exactly. What are you doing? I'm in the basement now. What are you doing in the basement? I'm honing my craft. Leave me alone.
That's hilarious.
Okay. Dad is honing his craft in here.
Why don't you get a job? I'm honing my craft.
Right.
That's a good point. I feel like I've told my mom that too many times. But
right, yeah.
We're still here.
Mom.
I'm hoping we can go back to Enlightenment just a tiny bit more.
Yeah, great.
You might just say, no, it's up to people's interpretation, but is there anything you want people to take away from the piece when they read it?
I would love for anybody to read it, which I'm sure they will. There'll be some people who read it, so I'm not the person to write a meditation. But if I were to write a meditation, that would be it, right? And so then you take that as it was, a meditation. It's like on the body, I suppose, and on your own. I don't know, it's like not really your own death, but it's like one of those things you would read in a book of meditations. It's weirder, but I think if it would be the kind of one I would want to read,
Yeah, absolutely.
that would make me think. I mean, not only about like enlightenment, but also like the physical process of it and what, I don't know, what it means to kind of be embodied and, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, and this is not, I don't think there's an interpretation. If you have an interpretation, it's probably better than mine, but the path to enlightenment is sort of, it's physical as well as or intellectual, right? I think, and which isn't to say go exercise. I'm just saying it's like you have to be aware of your body, right? You know what I mean, or like, and what's kind of going on, and how you are like a human in the world, right? And like don't really ascribe to a soul. So I'd sort of say like this is what you have.
That works. That's good enough. Final question: is there anything that you'd like to add, or anything, any message you have for people?
Submit to Archetype magazine and donate your funds. Donate your funds to
Donate so we can pay our writers.
Right. Yes. Exactly.
Thank you so much. That was great.
Of course. Yes. Anytime. I look forward to seeing this issue with me, of course, but then the next one too, and
absolutely.
On.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
All right.
Take care.
Take care, Ollie.